On behalf of MIEA, as the president of MIEA, I would like to extend our greatest welcome to all of you who joined us today. This is our inaugural, the first ever REN Summit. We wanted to do it for a long time, but really couldn't make it. But now we finally made it. So we are actually very excited about it. And I think the very short message that that we want to do this is MIEA will get you ready for 2021. But are you ready for us? All right. So can I have the slide, please? Is it better to take out? Okay. The producer requested me to take this out. Okay, now, just I was having a chat with David, and David was asking, he said, actually, how does people actually forecast what's going to happen next year? Actually, what most people really do is, we are going to go into very in-depth on showing you on what exactly happened in Malaysia, okay, for this particular year. Then from looking at this trend, you look at the overview performance and also the month-to-month performance. From there, you will actually be able to get a better idea on what is the trend going to be in next year. So the majority of time of this particular paper today, I'm going to show you what exactly happened in MIEA. What exactly happened in Malaysian property market this year. Because so many people has been asking and so many people has been forecasting early this year on how COVID is going to impact us. But as a professional, we should always take facts and data. So I'm going to show you a lot of facts and data, and you will notice from this particular paper I put there, it is actually from the agent's perspective. This is actually important because if you look at it from a different perspective, you will have a different understanding. And today, I will guide you through to how agents should be looking at this particular data and statistics, yeah, to make it relevant to us. So, the million-dollar question is this: how much is Malaysian property market being affected by COVID-19 this year? Okay, now I'm going to show you a series of data, and all these series of data are taken out from National Property Information Center, and we already have data up to the third quarter of this year, so which is until September. Yeah, so this is very, very timely and very, very updated. Yeah, we don't have to make any guess. We already have the hard data. This will be probably the first and foremost important, especially when your client is asking, hey, how is Malaysian property market being affected by COVID-19? This is the first thing that you should be telling them. According to the first half, this is the first 6 months of 2020, the total transaction figures, we have the total volume on the left-hand side and the total value of the right-hand side. Now, let's zoom in to talk about the stories behind this graph. The first thing you see is a V-curve. So what is this V-curve telling us? V-curve is basically saying that there is a rebound. There is a rebound. And as you can see from there, the line actually shows a very sharp reduction in March. Why? Because MCO actually started on the 18th of March and until the early of May. And this is why you see when the early of May, when the MCO started to be more relaxed, more agents are allowed to go and do showings. Legal firms has resumed their operations. Land office has opened again. Then immediately you see there is a sharp rise. There is a V-shaped sharp rise right after that. Okay, and I can tell you from July, August, and September after that is a continue rising. Now, I don't like some people, they say that, oh, Malaysian property market actually was dropped by 30%. No, I don't like the way of drop. I don't think that is a very fair comment, because what really happened during MCO was no real estate activities are allowed to happen. The market did not drop, but nothing was allowed to happen. And therefore, you see the reduction there. Later, we will go in for a lot more detailed data. Okay? Now, this is by comparison from previous years, 2018, 2019, and 2020. This year, looking at the first half of the year, at the same thing on the left-hand side, you see the volume, and on the right-hand side, you actually see the value. And what you are seeing here was this. Compared to the previous years, this year, in terms of total transaction, we see a drop of 27%. In terms of total value, we actually see a drop of 31.5%. Now, where is this drop actually comes from? Like I mentioned earlier, just now, there was almost a full 2 months, where no activities was allowed to actually happen. And if you take out 2 months out of the total 6 months, which is the first half of the year, that is exactly amounting to about 30%. You are taking away 30% of the time. So when you're taking away 30% of the time, and this is why you see here, this 30% was reflected from this particular data, and therefore you see a reduction of approximately 30%. Now, if you go further in, this is only for the first six months of year, you will be able to see out of the total value 46.94 billion, almost across the board, every sector is very badly affected. You can see residential 26%, commercial 33%, industrial 23%, agriculture 39%, and development land and others 55%. So across the board, everyone is affected. Later, I'm going to show you another graph, another table which is telling you what about Q3, which is the latest one. You are going to see some difference there. Okay, like I always tell my negotiators and my students, when you look at any statistic or data, don't just look at it from the surface. You have to really understand the story behind and connect to what you are doing from a day-to-day basis. Okay, same thing here. Everyone is every sector is badly affected. Total of, for the first half of this year, there is a total of 115,000 units of property being transacted. Now, we're coming to the latest figure, which is the Q3, July, August, and also September. Comparing with the previous similar period of 2016, 17, 18, and 19, you will notice straight away that it actually has a very sharp increase. There is even a higher increase. One very possible reason could be many things that are supposed to happen on the first half of the year, due to MCO, it was delayed and postponed to actually this particular period. And therefore, you see a sharp rise. So you see an even higher rebound, okay? And the next one, like I mentioned earlier, now, you start seeing blue color, lesser red color. So on a Q3, you actually start seeing the residential starts to giving some positive growth figure. Industrial, 15%, doing fantastically. Agricultural, 19%, also doing very well. And development land also doing reasonably good, 20%, though the percentage in terms of value is actually lesser. But one thing you will actually notice, take a look at the commercial. You will notice in terms of volume, it still, where everybody else has already increased in the third quarter of this year, commercial still decreases. And when it comes to value, it's even worse, 37.4%. That is in terms of value. So all this is telling us, is giving you a very good indication that among all sectors of real estate, especially in Malaysia, from the statistic, the commercial market is the worst affected by this COVID-19. And later, I will go even deeper for you all to really discuss what exactly is commercial. What is the definition? Because there are some new element added for this couple of years into the commercial element, and therefore make the definition a slightly different. I will talk about it later in later slides. Now, somebody may be asking, or some of your clients must be asking, hey, is it good to invest in property in Malaysia? Does property or if I buy a house today, will it actually rise, or how much it will actually rise over the years? Now, when you want to answer that sort of question to your client, you must look at one particular index called Malaysian House Price Index. Okay, it's called MHPI, Malaysian House Price Index. And they actually use the year 2010 as what we call base year. Okay, so if you look at the average, if you look at the average price of 2010, it was actually about 210,000. So back in year 2000, the average house price in Malaysia, the year 2010, the average house price in Malaysia is approximately 200,000. And if you look at today, the index point is actually 198.3. And this is actually telling you, if you multiply it, it will actually tells you that basically for the past 10 years, the house price has risen by almost 100%. Okay, so from 200,000 all the way to slightly over 400,000. Okay, that is the, later I will go deeper into the house price in terms of geographical area as well. And from here, there's another thing you can also notice. Look at the orange line. The orange line, it is actually telling you in that particular year, how much does the Malaysian house price actually increases. You will notice in year 2010, 2011, and 2012, it actually reaches the highest. Within these 3 years, it's actually not just these 3 years. It actually started from the year 2000 until 2012. It actually rises every year about 10%. That is how high it is. This is why you see our government come in with what we call a responsible lending policy on the 1st of January 2012 to really start cooling down the property market. And then only you start seeing the orange line start declining. Now, when you see the orange line start declining, it doesn't mean that property house price is reducing. It only means the reduction, the rate of reduction is reducing. It is growing up at a slower rate. Okay? Now, but if you notice from here, you will start seeing the latest one is about 0.4. That is under the first half of this year. If you look at the latest third quarter of this year, you will actually see a minus 0 point something. And that is actually telling you, yes, for the first time, the average house price in Malaysia overall has actually declining, but within 1%. It's not a huge decline. So when someone outside or many people telling you, you know, the house price is going to drop 10%, 20%, 30%, or even some say 70%, that is not really going to happen. Okay, so according to statistics, actually it's about within the 1% drop in terms of value. Now this is another graph based on different kind of houses. You will see a terrace house, high-rise, detached, and also semi-detached. So if you look at the different, perhaps you can just pay attention to the on top or right-hand corner there. This is until the quarter 3 2020. All house price average is about 426,000, which is 197.8 index point. Terrace is about 218. So terrace actually performed better than the average. High-rise is about 153, slightly lower. Detached is even lower. Semi-D is even lower. So meaning, well, if someone is, this is also telling you that perhaps, this is basically telling you that if you buy a landed terrace house, the chance for this to grow or to outgrow the value of the average property prices in Malaysia is much higher. Okay, so this is how you actually connect all this information to your day-to-day work. So we talk about house price, but those are in terms of different categories. So now we can actually look at in terms of location. Okay, but again, this is still a generalized thing. So in terms of Malaysia, you will see a mean which is about 367,000, a median which is about 290,000. So what's the difference between mean and median? Mean is actually the average figure. Median is actually the average of the two middle figure. Okay, so there is some formula going on there. So you can actually make reference to somewhere mean. You can look at mean average. You can tell them this is what the average house in Malaysia house price is. So you're going to see example from central region, Kuala Lumpur, which should be the highest. Is the average house price of Kuala Lumpur is about 700,000. Okay, and then Putrajaya about 300,000, Selangor about 500,000, and then of course you have your Johor. Johor mean is about 381,000, Malacca 233, Negeri Sembilan 273, and then another higher one should be Penang 347. Many of you may say, hey, how come Penang only 347? It should be a lot higher. But do not forget, Pulau Pinang includes the mainland. Pulau Pinang actually includes mainland. And the value of the price in mainland is a lot lower. All right? So, next one, if you look at our East Coast, okay, relatively lower, in the range of 200 over 1,000. And our East Malaysia, you will notice they are not cheap at all. Sarawak is about 324,000, and the median of Sabah and mean of Sabah is about 328,000. Okay, so basically, 224 is Labuan. Sarawak is 352. So you will notice actually our East Malaysia's partners, their house price is not cheap at all. It's actually higher than some of the places over in Semenanjung. Now let's look at some of the construction activities that's going on this couple of months. Very clearly, you actually see a declining what we call decline trend. It simply means all the developers are slowing down their launches. All the developers are slowing down their construction, okay, their projects, which is a good thing in the long run because there seems to be some mismatch between demand and supply, especially currently, where later we are going to look at the next slide, which is, of course, the very popular topic in Malaysia, which is called overhang. Now, allow me to actually ask you this. What is as a real estate agent or negotiators, what is the first thing that comes into your mind when I ask you about overhang? You can just answer by yourself. I won't be able to see anything you type. Okay? Now, but I was in one of the important meetings that I attended together with the Economic Action Council very recently, that several real estate practitioners in Malaysia, me representing MIEA, is attending with this ESC council to really sit down to talk about how can we address the issue of overhang properties. Now, this is a very huge topic, but when I was asked this question where, what is your first thing that come into your mind when I tell you about property overhang? My answer is, from the point of view of a registered estate agent and negotiator, I see business opportunity. I see business opportunity. I mean, as economists, as normal people, they may not like the word overhang, but agent, I'm not saying that we like overhang, but But then again, it is actually a business opportunity. And very true enough, I can give you many examples on how our members has done so well in selling all these so-called overhang properties for the developer. I remember last year alone, one of our board of directors has managed to sell over 2,000 units of Prima housing. One company sold over 2,000. Actually, he sold over 4,000 units in total, but 1,000 over the loan was not approved. So still in the end, there's still over 2,000 units being sold for Prima alone. So you can see how much and how well our agents are actually performing last year, despite the very soft market sentiment. And like I said, overhang to agents is a business opportunity, okay, even for now. And then, of course, you will start seeing the official data coming from the government. They start segmenting this particular overhang according to the property type and also according to different price range. Yeah. So there are a few things you will actually notice from here. First of all, there are a few things you will notice. You will always see the word Johor. So if you are in Johor, you definitely have a lot more compared to other places. Johor is actually Johor and Selangor. These two places, you have a lot more stocks of overhang properties for you to sell. And then the second thing, you have to take note on this. Overhang property, usually we are more looking back at the residential property, but because previous years onwards, we have some developers who become very creative and they start creating things like service apartment, Soho, Sovo, okay? So all this, even though some of it is actually meant, I would say maybe majority of it is actually meant for residential purposes, but the title, the land use, the title is actually commercial. And therefore, from then on, every time when we look at the property overhang, you don't just look at residential, you also have to include all those service apartments and also Soho and Sovo. And this is why you see the figures are actually increasing. And this is also the same reason why I told you all just now, when we look at the definition of commercial from now on, it's slightly different than before. It also includes things like service apartment and Sovo and Soho. Okay? So, and you will actually notice at least 50% of all these overhang properties is below 500,000. Now, this is the latest Q3 data. So what are the developers actually building right now? Are they building the right thing or not? Let's look at it. There is a total, this is only residential, not including the those Soho and Sovo. The residential itself, you will see high-rise property and landed total about 6,000 units. Look at the price range. You will notice more than 74% of the new launches of residential property in Malaysia is below 500,000. It's below 500,000. Look at how developers actually change their strategy. And of course, now we all know things that really move a lot faster is those property within the price of 500,000. But also at the same time, we want to take note also when this becomes more and more, will it also flood the property market in future? That is something for us to figure out later. Okay. Now let's drill even further with what each different segment, which is looking at residential property. This is only on first half, the first 6 months of Malaysia. You will actually notice 41% of terrace house actually dominated the transaction. Some of you may feel, how come? No lah, KL where got so many terrace house. But Malaysia is not just about KL. Okay, Malaysia also got Penang, got Perak, got Sabah, Sarawak. So they also even when we just have to look at Negeri Sembilan, itself, it has a lot of new launches on landed property. And also another thing for you to really look at, take note on, there is a total of 61.9% of transactions are below 300,000. So just now, we were talking that most developers are launching product which is below 500,000. But this graph is actually telling you, actually, there are even more people, 60% of it are buying properties which is under 300,000, okay? Even lower. Some of you may ask, then where should I buy my property? Where should I put my money in? Well, if you look at this, Selangor contributed the most transaction, followed by Johor and also Perak. But I will actually look at it in a slightly different way, where I will actually combine Kuala Lumpur with Selangor. To me, the property market between Kuala Lumpur and Selangor, or sometimes we just call Klang Valley. I mean, last time we used to call it Klang Valley. Okay? Last time we used to call it Klang Valley. Now we call it Greater KL. KL and Selangor, these two states in terms of property market is inseparable. Okay? That should be combined as one. This is a graph that actually tells you that the existing supply meaning the existing residential houses or apartments in Malaysia is 5.7 million in Malaysia. Okay, that's how many houses we have in the whole Malaysia. And you can see from here and you will notice 78.3% of the future supply are terrace houses and also high-rise unit. The next slide actually tells you, previously they don't really, the government didn't really do much of this analysis because because of the overhang issue, people are saying that there is a mismatch between demand and supply. And therefore, our government started to come out with some so-called demand-driven data. Of course, now, the only demand-driven data is what they call the transacted property, okay, which is, okay, close enough. But if you really ask me, it's not quite yet, because to me, demand-driven data is not just what has been transacted, but more on what exactly are the people wanted. What kind of properties or what kind of price range that people in that particular vicinity actually wanted. That is their spending pattern, their behavior. I think that is more on a demand-driven data that we really need, which is very lacking in the market right now. There are few property portals such as iProperty and Property Guru. They do publish some so-called demand-driven data based on their search, based on their consumers or customers search, which also provide you for another perspective on what are the hot areas that people are looking for. But in the end of the day, it still doesn't tell you what is their spending behavior and what exactly are the things they are looking at. So we definitely need a lot more market-driven data in order to solve the mismatch between the upcoming supply and also demand info in the market. So the next thing, we quickly look at commercial. I know many of you, we already know just now that commercial will be the worst impacted. Yeah? And from here, you will actually see majority of it is actually terrace shop. And also you will start seeing some service apartment. Yeah, don't forget, like I said, service apartment and also Soho Sovo comes under commercial, even though they are used as residential purposes. And you will notice the transaction below 300,000 is about 27%, and between 500,000 and 1 million. So if you want to, this is where you should put your money in. If you want to, if your client wanted to invest in commercial property, straight away you will see Selangor. But like I mentioned, Kuala Lumpur should be combined with Selangor together. Okay, then of course you see followed by Johor and Perak. Yeah, many of you may not realize Perak is actually a very active state. Yeah, a very active property market. Again, here one very interesting is you can find in Malaysia so far there is a total of 840,000 units of commercial units in Malaysia, and out of which 31% are service apartment. Okay, 31% are service apartment. And 72.3% of any of upcoming future supply are made out of service apartment as well. You don't really see a lot more shop house coming in or shop office, but you see a lot of a total of close to 500,000 of units of service apartment coming in. This is not. This may flood the market. Okay, this may further flood the market. And all this in the end, it will actually go into residential. Yeah, because they are all used for residential purposes. So now, there isn't a very clear distinction between residential and commercial anymore, because a lot of elements inside the commercial is actually also considered as part of the residential now. So when you read all this data, you must read both. You cannot just read residential, you must read together commercial and also residential. This is where you go even deeper. You will notice, let me see, the terrace about terrace shop is about 4,000, Soho is about 1,300, 1,500, service apartment about 1,400. Okay, and you look at the existing supply is 840,000, future supply is about 430,000 units coming out. One thing that we actually bring to the attention to our government recently is that, I'm not saying all, but there are certain developers taking opportunities on commercial land, because just by using the commercial land to build Soho or service apartment, your density or the plot ratio will be a lot higher. It can be about 3 or 4 times higher than a normal residential land. So the units will be a lot more, even though the similar location. Now for those who are doing industrial, 43% is above 1 million. All these are really big ticket items. Okay, industrial is definitely one of the better perform. Even during this pandemic time. If you look at it, straight away you are going to see Selangor and also Johor, Sarawak, and also Pulau Pinang. All right, so these are the 4 states which has the most market transaction in terms of industrial property market. And the supply now in whole Malaysia factories, we have about 120,000. Okay, one is actually 117 to be more exact, and future supply 11,000. So what you are seeing from here, I'm sorry, I haven't pressed this one. Okay, what you are seeing from here is that it is actually telling you that actually the incoming supply for industrial property is not a lot. It's not a lot. Therefore, we really don't have an oversupply of issue when it comes to industrial property. So this is also telling you that you can safely tell your investors or your factory owners that, hey, you know what, because of the supply and the supply and demand issue, the industrial property market is, the value of the industrial property is going to hold very well, okay, for the upcoming years. And this is where look at it in terms of different types, okay, different types. Now, after looking at all the looking at Malaysian property market in a very detailed manner, how are we going to do next year? That we already have a few, okay. But before we come in to really go and talk about how do we think we are going to, what's going to happen next year, it really depends on how well we actually do in terms of our pandemic management. This was actually taken out, the screenshot taken out yesterday from this index called Global COVID Index, data as at 11 December 2020, yesterday. And this is actually managed by Malaysia, okay, Pemandu. Managed by Malaysia Pemandu as one of the #1 COVID-19 index in the world. They actually index every country's performance with respect to their COVID-19 performance on a daily basis for a total of 180 countries. And out of this 180 countries, yesterday Malaysia is ranked number 15. We are really quite up on there, up on the top of the list. So to be very frank, we are doing very well, okay? At least according to this particular index. So what's going to happen next year then? We already know what exactly is happening this year alone. So moving forward, we strongly believe the year 2021 will be a market recovery year. Okay, the market will continue to recover. The economy will continue to do better. And you will start seeing the work from home culture will also continue. And also because of the work from home culture, digitalization of the business and also processes will be automated. And when all this is happening, there will be lesser requirement for, especially on corporate office space. All right? So you're going to see a lot of repurposing of the usage of commercial building or spaces, such as maybe people will even start doing vertical farming using their shop in Putrajaya maybe, okay? Or they may start making it to use it for last mile delivery. So what is last mile delivery is I'm sure you all have been buying things from Lazada. So when you buy things from Lazada, it will come, the thing will actually come out from the warehouse, and then from the warehouse, it will actually go to a temporary warehouse which is near you. So the temporary warehouse which is near you, that is what we call a last mile delivery. So these things is actually already happening in US for the last couple of years. Just that now, because of pandemic, everything, all this evolution is moving so much faster. So much faster. And then you're going to see a lot of the logistics, warehousing, and data center. I was informed recently there is 100 million data center being sold, okay, in Malaysia. So definitely logistics and warehousing will continue to do well. They'll continue to spur. And the property market for next year will still be to be taken lead by residential. And not forgetting there's one more thing here called RCEP. Now RCEP actually brings Malaysia into the largest free trade zone, yeah? The largest free trade zone between all these countries here, between the ASEAN country plus another Asia, 5 of them, 5 others. Now, of course, there are many aspects as to how we can look at this RCEP, but one thing for sure, this RCEP itself will definitely allow money to flow much easier in between all these countries. That includes Malaysia. So that in turn will definitely have a very positive impact on Malaysia economy and then on Malaysian property market. And at the same time, of course, MIEA, we would like to urge the government to seriously looking at to further open up the control on the foreigner ownership in Malaysia. In Malaysia now we only have about 3% of the property which is owned by foreigner, which is a lot lower than our neighbors. Many of our neighbors, they have foreigner ownership which is about 15%. So we still have a lot of room to grow from there. Okay. So with that, I hope I actually give you all more insight to give you a feel of what's exactly happened this year, and so that you actually somehow can feel what's going to happen next year. None of us actually has a crystal ball, but from this hard data and statistic, I think it is definitely on the recovery trend. That is something undisputable. Okay, so with that, I thank you.